Good evening, and welcome to a celebration of Reading's own suffragist, Elsie Hill. Tonight, storyteller and women's studies scholar Darla Shaw will take on the part of Elsie and tell you about the important role she played in the passage of the 19th Amendment.
Welcome, everyone. Votes for Women, the 100th celebration of the 19th Amendment. The Susan B. Anthony Amendment. Oh, I'm so happy you joined in tonight. Now, I'm Elsie Hill. I was born in the late 1800s in Norwalk, and I've spent most of my life right here in Reading on 70 Acre Road, right in my rock house. But before I get to my life, there's a little vocabulary lesson that I would like to give you. Now, first of all, the word suffrage is the Latin word for getting the vote. Yes, we did suffer, but it's really the Latin translation. Now, secondly, there is a difference between a suffragette and a suffragist. The suffragette, these were the women from London. They were militant. They were violent. They would throw rocks to get attention. They would start fires. They would vandalize. They would do whatever to make a point. Those were the suffragettes. In the United States, people like myself were suffragists. We were peaceful. We were calm. We were nonviolent. Now, another word you're going to hear is enfranchisement. Yes, I started many enfranchisement groups, which I am so proud of. Now, we're going to get into the color war a little bit. You're going to hear me talk about the antis. The antis were the people who were against the 19th Amendment. Now, you're saying, why would anybody be against the 19th Amendment? Oh, there were a lot of people against the 19th Amendment. Many men, Southerners, politicians, but mostly the alcohol liquor industry. They knew that if women got the right to vote, there would be prohibition. Now, these people, the antis, wore red. They had red roses in their lapel or on their blouses. Now, on the other hand, I was a rat, and a rat is for ratification. So it was the red war against the yellow war. Now, speaking of colors, I'd like you to look at my sash here. And we have the yellow, the gold for bold and courageous, and we have the white for purity and integrity, and we have the purple for dignity and loyalty. Well, the last thing I want to talk to you about is the saying, we stand on the shoulders of the women who come before us. Well, the first women fighters were fighting for the abolition of slavery. This was Harriet Beecher Stowe. This was Sojourner Truth and people like that. Then we had the first wave of women. And in the first wave, oh, that famous Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and Lucy Stone. Now, what about me? I was in the extended first wave, or some people call it the second wave. There I stood, the best friend. 50 years, Alice Paul. I was with Lucy Burns. I was with Alva Belmont. Oh, did Alva have money? She bankrolled us so many times, she gave us headquarters. And then the wonderful, amazing Carrie Chapman Catt, that woman who started the League of Women Voters. Well, I'd like to start and tell you my story now. Oh my goodness, my family was one of the founding families in Fairfield County. Well, the story that I liked the most was about my father's mother, my grandmother. Ebenezer, my grandfather, was a minister, Episcopal minister. Oh, he had a great congregation, but he died early. Who was going to take over? My grandmother, in the early 1800s, she became a minister, a preacher. She took care of the congregation. Oh, my father, he was so special as well. He was a leader in the Civil War, a graduate of Yale University, a U.S. Senator. Oh, he would take my two sisters and myself. We would sit in on congressional meetings. We would learn about politics and the law. He ran 4 businesses in Norwalk, including a railroad. And the story we heard over and over and over was his cross-country trip, cross-continental trip to Russia to meet with industrials in the railroad industry. He was, of course, also head of the bank. But the best thing, the very best thing about my father, equality for women. He believed that we were equal to men, that we did not have to get married, and that we had to have an education, and we better have a career and be able to pay our own way. Now, my mother, head of Daughters of the American Revolution in Connecticut, strong suffragette, took the 3 women in our family constantly to suffragette meetings. We were in preschool. We didn't care about Cinderella and Goldilocks and Little Red Riding Hood. We knew about Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Lucretia Mott. They were our heroes. Well, when it came time to vote, my father would go off to vote, and I said, "Mom, aren't you going to vote with Dad?" And she would say to me, "Honey, women can't vote." And I was shocked, and then she would say to me, "But you know, you girls are going to make a difference. You're going to see that we do." Oh, our parents so inspired us to do good for women's rights. Well, my sisters-in-law, we were all very theatrical. You know, when Little Women, they would put on plays in the attic, in the living room. Well, we did too. But we went one step further. We took our plays up and down the Connecticut coastline when we were in high school and college. And what was the theme of our plays? Women's rights, suffragette, getting the votes. We became very popular. It was donation only, and we used the money for the cause. When it came time to go to college, all 3 of us went to Vassar. Oh, that was the best place we could have gone. All of our works, publications, and papers are still housed there. Now, my oldest sister was Clara. Oh, she was so smart. She became a teacher. She became a missionary. She worked on women's rights all over the world. I was so proud of her. And then there was Helena. Helena was going to be the scientist in the family. Well, in the 1800s, women were not scientists. To become a geologist, she had to go out to Montana, to the Montana School of Mining. Became a geologist, made a great name for herself, but also became a journalist. And what did she write about? Books, articles. They were all about women's rights. I guess my biggest claim to fame at Vassar was starting the Enfranchisement Groups. Remember, these were the groups to get women activated build self-confidence, and get the women's vote. Well, I was so successful with these groups because I was so well organized, loved to speak and write. They invited me all over the United States to start similar groups. I was only in college. I was so proud of what I was able to do. And then the black colleges down south started calling me to come and start groups there. Ooh, this was a little touchy because there was always the decision, do the white women get the vote first and then the black women? Do we do it together? How do we handle this situation? But I went down there, I started the groups, and by the time I got through Vassar, I had a federation of these groups all around the United States. Well, each time one of us graduated from Vassar, we got $1,000. Might not seem like a lot now. It was a lot back then. And my father said, you're going abroad. I want you to learn about a culture, a language. I want you to study there. I want you to come back so proficient in that culture. Well, I chose France, and I'm so glad I did. I spent a couple of years there studying, living with family, learning the language. When I came back, I decided, where do I want to live? I know. I want to go to Washington, D.C. because that's where it's happening. That's where the legislation is. So I came to Washington, D.C. Oh, I got a job right away, no problem, French teacher in a high school. And then I had to find a women's group, and I decided to join NAS. NAS was National American Women's Suffragette Association. So many letters, such a powerful organization, led by Carrie Chapman Catt. I was in my mid-20s. Carrie was in her 60s. But she was still very dynamic and looking for young, enthusiastic, talented people, and boy, I fit the bill in her eyes. I was so lucky when I joined NAS. 2 other women, the most outstanding women, joined at just about the same time. Alice Paul and Lucy Burns. Alice was the Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the writer, the organizer, the serious one. Lucy Burns was Susan B. Anthony, the outspoken, the dynamic speaker. Well, we got along so well. We were almost the same age. We came from wealthy, strong suffragette families. Alice was a Quaker. I was an Episcopalian. And, well, we had a Catholic girl with Lucy. Well, what happened was that these 2 women, Lucy and Alice, had just come back from Europe. They had been learning about the suffragette movement from the Pankhursts, Emmeline and Christabel. Now, there was a big difference. They learned about petitioning and publicity and volunteers and parades and just about anything you need to campaign. But they were violent. They were the suffragettes. They threw rocks, they threw bombs, they vandalized, they did anything to get attention. We didn't believe in that. We were all very, very religious people. We were very educated. Alice, Swarthmore, Columbia, a degree in social work. Lucy, also Vassar, earlier than myself, graduate degree from Yale, linguistics from Germany, and she was studying at Oxford. And there I was with my Vassar degree. Oh, we had such a brain tank going on. Well, Caddy said, I hear you have a plan for a parade. And Alice said, we do have a plan for a parade. And the first thing that Carrie said to us was, it has to be ladylike, it has to be peaceful, and there can be no violence. Oh, why would there be violence? It is so well planned. Well, my job, because I was a great organizer, was to get the petition signed, to get the police, to get crowd control, and to get speakers. I had a lot of connections. I got Helen Keller to speak at the end. I got Inez. I got Ida Wells, a wonderful Black poet. And what I was also in charge of was my groups, my enfranchisement groups. I got them funding, I got them to Washington, D.C. By the time we got finished, 8,000 women were marching in this parade the day before the inauguration for Woodrow Wilson. We wanted to blow him out of the water. We wanted to show him we had to get the vote. We didn't want people to go to his inauguration. We wanted them at our parade. Well, I did my bit. My groups were there. We had a problem. White women, Black women. Were we going to include them? Were we not going to include them? I fought for the Black women. They were my friends. Incorrectly, we decided they should be at the back of the parade. Well, Ida Wells decided I'll start at the back of the parade, but I'm a key speaker and I am just as proud and as good as any white woman. And she meandered until she was up near the front. And she taught us that we belong together and we should have had men in this as well. It was a beautiful day. The crowds were amazing. 100,000 people turned out for this parade. We started with 6 to 8 women across. There were such crowds that as we walked down Pennsylvania Avenue, we had to almost go single file, 3 at a time, 2 at a time, finally 1 at a time. Leading the women, Inez Mulholland. Oh, was she beautiful. She was Lady Godiva with clothes on. She wasn't only beautiful, she was so smart. She was a lawyer that could speak beyond belief. In back of her, 4 horse brigades, 6 big bands, all with women, 26 floats showing the progressive history of women. And then in back, women dressed like myself, all in white, or teachers in their cap and gowns, big groups of nurses in their uniforms, factory workers wearing their gear. We were so, so proud. We were fighting for women's rights. But then we got in front of the Capitol. And believe me, all hell broke loose. As I said, we were like only 1 or 2 abreast. The ropes came down. People burst through the lines. There were only a few police. They didn't know how to handle the situation. We were heckled. We were spit at. We were thrown to the ground. Our sashes were ripped off us. Our hats were thrown. Our blouses were ripped. Oh, tomatoes and eggs and rocks were thrown at us. It was such a melee. It was unbelievable. Every police precinct was called. Every hospital ambulance was out. Over 200 people were taken to the hospital or to the police station. We were all arrested. Nobody was charged. It had happened so fast. Nobody knew how to handle the situation. So they let us go. The next day, well, you can imagine Carrie Chapman Catt was not happy. Where was ladylike? Where was peaceful? It certainly wasn't at this parade. But the newspapers, oh, the radio programs, the publicity we got. Alice, Lucy, and I said, oh my goodness, we have made our mark. People will never forget us. People know we are here to stay, and we are going to get the vote for women. It had been worth it in our eyes. After things settled down, we went to see the president. He said, oh, no, we aren't ready to give you the right to vote. Patience, patience, patience. Your day will come. He was against suffragettes, his wife was, and all of the men that he was dealing with. He was also a Southerner. Well, what were we going to do now? Carrie said, you know, the war is coming up. We are not going to protest during a war. That's not what women do. And Alice said, we're fighting the war over freedom. Women don't have freedom. We are going to continue to fight. Well, at that point, the three of us younger women saw we needed to start our own party. We started the Congressional Party. It later became the National Women's Party. There was such an age difference between the two groups. They also wanted absolutely nothing that would be unladylike. We were at the point, no, we don't want violence, but we're going to stand up for our rights. But the biggest difference was they were happy with going state by state by state and getting the vote, and they wanted nothing to do with the ERA. We did not want to go state by state by state. This was Carrie's way of doing it, and it worked beautifully for her. We wanted an amendment that would take care of the whole voting situation, and we wanted to take it one step further and get the Equal Rights Amendment. So we split. Alice said, we're going to continue. What are we going to do? And Lucy said, we are going to protest in front of the White House. Oh, did we protest? We were supposed to be the silent Centennials. Well, we really were not all that silent. Chained ourselves to the fence, stood on soapboxes, banner after banner, posters, petitions, speeches, and so on. We were there. Snow, wind, rain, hurricane, we were there. Oh, we were such a thorn in the president's side. Why did we chain ourselves to the fence? Because it was harder to arrest us. They had to unchain us, which was difficult, and they had to do all the paperwork. They didn't want to do the paperwork to throw us in prison. So this was our way of doing it. Every so many days they'd pick a group of us and throw us into prison. Why? Loitering, disturbing the peace, obstructing traffic. Oh my goodness, what terrible offenses. Then we're in prison. Oh. believable. We were abused. We were raped. We were beaten. We slept on straw with rats running all over. We ate food with worms in it, a mushy type of thing. And when we went on a hunger strike, the worst part of all, force feeding, putting metal clamps on our noses and throats that would cut our face, and they would pour in eggs and water and milk, and we would convulse and we would choke. And if we chanted, if we sang, if we protested in any way, they didn't hang us by our necks because they certainly didn't want us to perish, but they would hang us by our arms and clasp us to the fences and gates of the prison walls. This was a form of torture. It was so painful that we finally had to give in. This shortened the life of practically every single woman that protested. We were all thrown in 6 or 7 times for several months at a time until we got so sick they were afraid we were going to die. Well, I was probably thrown in prison more than anyone else, and that's because I also protested in Boston and Philadelphia and Denver and New York City. My most famous protest, I can't believe I even did this. I'm in Washington, D.C. I climb up on Lafayette's statue, and this was not an easy climb. I'm hanging off of Lafayette's statue, and I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, here I am. I am on the pedestal of Lafayette's statue. Men say women want to be on a pedestal. Well, here I am. I do not want to be on a pedestal. I just want what men have. I want equal rights. And many of you women out there, I know you do as well. Well, of course, I got thrown into prison for that. One time that I did not get thrown in, along with Lucy and Alice, was the following. Woodrow Wilson didn't go in a back door like they do now. He just went in the front gate, and one morning he said to us, ladies, it would be so nice if one day I could walk through this gate and you were not there with your signs and placards and banners. One day, give me one day. So we said, okay. Well, we all wore bloomers at that time because of Amelia Bloomer. So what we decided to do is on the bottom of our bloomers, we would put votes for women. And we stood in groups of 3. So when Woodrow Wilson went by, we turned, we bent over, we flipped up our petticoats, votes for women. He had passed us. He heard the laughter and cheering, and he knew we had gotten the best of them. But he never, ever put us in prison for that. Well, finally, Woodrow Wilson decided, you know, maybe the time has come for women to get the right to vote. There were all these women out west that were voting. It was a package deal. Ladies, you want to go out west? Get a husband, a better paying job than here, and we'll even throw in the vote. A lot of times the vote was rescinded. But women out west had the vote. Some in the Midwest had the vote. People were still talking about the parade. 100,000 people turning out. And in the paper, always there were pictures of the silent Centennials, what they were up to, the protests and the imprisonment. But the thing that really changed the mind of Woodrow Wilson, 15 groups of women were helping the war effort. There were nurses, there were ambulance drivers, cryptographers, there were people who were translating, there were spies, there were the hello girls, the telephone operators, there were the people who were the clerks, there were the canteen people. There were so many women helping the war effort. How could they deny women the right to vote? Well, Woodrow Wilson supported us, Congress supported us, and now 38 states we had to get for the vote. This was not going to be easy. There were so many against us, particularly remember the liquor industry. In 1919, we were 2 votes short of getting the women's vote. In 1920, we were 1 vote, and we didn't make it. Later in 1920, there was a big conference in Tennessee, and boy, did we work for this big conference. Alice had put so much hope into me. My father, my beloved father, was in the hospital dying. I was in the hospital with pneumonia. I could not go to Tennessee. I felt such guilt. And Alice said to me, "Elsie, you need to be in Tennessee." And I said, "This is the only time, Alice, I have ever let you down." I was not there. But luckily, the vote did pass. And it may have been because of 3 women from Main Street, Ridgefield, Connecticut. 2 strong suffragettes, very wealthy women, Shields and Alcott, ran the suffragettes in Ridgefield. An older woman in Ridgefield was a relative of Warren G. Harding, who was going to be the next president. She said, "Warren G. Harding is friends with Senator Burns, who might change from that red rose to the yellow. I want you Ridgefield women to go talk to Warren G. Harding and get Burns to change his vote. And I want you to get Warren G. Harding to go to Burns' mother, because Burns' mother was a strong suffragette." If you've ever seen the movie Iron-Jawed Angels, you will see Warren G. Harding right there by Burns, handing him a letter from his mother, and he takes the red rose out and puts the yellow rose in. Finally, after 100 years, the women got the right to vote. So what happens next? Well, the women get the right to vote. Maybe the white women, not all of the black women. I mean, there was voter suppression. There weren't that many polls. You had to pay a poll tax. You had to be able to read and write. But at least we were moving forward. Now, Carrie Chapman Catt, she had just lost her second husband. She had lost many people in her family. She decided to go to Europe and rest. Well, any suffragette doesn't rest. She goes to Europe and she starts a suffragette movement over there. But she also decides, I'm going to come back to the United States and I need to start the League of Women Voters. Women have the right to vote now, but nobody's educated them. They don't know anything about laws or politics. They have to be educated. And now that we have the right to vote, shouldn't we have politicians and campaigns to get women involved? So she educated them as well. Now, Lucy Burns, she said, I have had it. I have put 300% of my life into getting the right to vote. I need a life of my own. She was a strong Catholic girl. She went to work with Catholic charities, and she worked with orphanages. And so that left Alice and myself, and Alva, remember the woman with all the money? She had married a Vanderbilt. Her family had money. She married a Belmont and more money. She had 6 mansions. She turned 2 of them into our headquarters, and she funded so many of our events. Well, the first thing that Alice and I decided to do was meet with this man called Albert Levitt. He was very much into women's rights. He was a professor at George Washington University. So we met with him and we talked and penned the Alice Paul Amendment for Equal Rights. I was very proud of what we did, and I really liked Albert. In fact, after this, the 2 of us married. Now, you've never heard me called Elsie Hill Levitt. I did not take his name. Lucy Stone, before me, also did not take her husband's name. Oh, were we radicals. Why would a woman not want to take her husband's name? Well, anyway, we penned this amendment. We took it to the legislature, and the legislature said, okay, fine. You know, we're going to give you till 1972 to get it passed. Now, that was a long time. We felt we would be okay. We knew it wasn't going to be easy. Well, one of the reasons it certainly wasn't easy was because of Phyllis Schaffler. Now, if any of you watch Mrs. America or The Amazing Mrs. Maisel, you've heard of Phyllis Schaffler, and she was a real person. Now, she put herself out there like Miss Susie Homebaker. Ho, 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 ho. She was a shrewd lawyer. She knew what she was doing. She had such backing that she almost single-handedly destroyed the ERA amendment for us, not only 1972, and it was extended to 1982, and we still don't have it, even though 2020, Virginia finally came in, giving us the last states. Well, Alice and I worked so hard on getting the ERA across, but Alice, you know, a lot of people were after her because she now not only had an undergraduate degree, a Columbia master's, she had gotten 2 more law degrees and a doctorate in law. So she really knew her legal stuff. So she started working abroad. She started working with the United Nations, the preamble, making it general neutral. She worked with the League of Nations. She worked with the Human Rights Commission. She worked with the Civil Rights Commission. She wrote the Bill of Civil Rights. I mean, she was so involved. And her biggest thrust in Europe was the birther, the citizenship law. You've heard about Obama and you've heard about Ted Cruz, and if the mother is abroad and she gives birth to a baby, the baby is not American. Oh, Alice fought so hard for this, and in 1934 she finally got this through. Well, how does this involve me? This involves me. As I said, Alice and I, 50 years, best friends, one fight over Tennessee. She said, you know, Elsie, I am in Europe so much. I am involved in so many things. I'm going to turn over the ERA and the National Women's Party to you. You're the only one I know that can take on this task. Ooh, right away I thought, can I handle this? And I said, yes, I can. I have been working all my life for this. So what did I do? While Alice was abroad, oh my goodness, I ran every conference, every convention. I went to all the legislative sessions. I did all the publicity. I wrote all the articles. I got on trains. I did whistle stops. Anytime there was a keynote speaker for women's rights, I was there. I even ran for Congress in Connecticut 3 times, hoping that this networking would help me get ERA through. And of course, what did I do on a regular basis? I debated Phyllis Schaffler. And it wasn't easy, but it was pretty much a draw when Phyllis and I got together. Oh my goodness, Phyllis was unreal. She would say to people, ladies, you vote for ERA. Husband's benefits, Social Security, pension, gone, gone, gone. Ladies, you're going to be drafted. You're going to be sent to boot camp. You're going to learn how to shoot a gun. You're going to be put on the front lines. If you die, who's going to take care of your kids? She'd say, ladies, equal rights, 1 bathroom. There's not going to be male-female bathrooms. 1 bathroom. There may not even be stalls. Now, is this what you want? Is this the ERA that you want? This is what I was up against with Phyllis. Well, I worked. I did everything I could. It even cost me my marriage. It's not that I didn't love Albert, and it's not that he didn't love me. He had a judgeship in the Virgin Islands. There's no way I could function the way I was functioning out of the Virgin Islands. So we split. I continued on my quest. In 1940, Alice Paul came to Branchville Road, Ridgefield, Connecticut. I was living less than a mile away in Reading on 70-acre road. I had divorced. I was living with my sister Cliff in my beautiful rock house that I love so dearly. Well, this worked so well for Alice, and the reason Alice came here is because her sister owned this house on Branchville Road right across from Bayberry Hill Lane, and she used it, her sister used it as a camp. There was a big house, main house, there was a pond with canoes, and then there were bungalows in the back that her sister used for the campers. And her sister said to her, Alice, what are you thinking? You have a cabin up in Vermont. You are traveling to Europe and Washington, D.C., and all over the United States, Boston and Philly. What are you doing living in Vermont? Come live with me on Branchville Road. So that's what Alice did, and that's how she got here. And she lived here for 40 years. Well, when her sister died after a couple of years, Alice said to me, you know, Elsie, what we're going to do, I'm going to sell this, and we're going to use all the money for ERA. I said, no. No, Alice, we are not going to do that. We are the age that Carrie Chapman Catt was when we first met. We need energy. We need passion. We need dedication. We need to start a women's leadership camp in that house. And that's what we did. And it worked out very well for us. We became even closer at the end than we were before that. Well, anyway, I had a heart problem, but I was doing pretty well, and I continued. And Alice's health began to deteriorate, and they had to put her in a nursing home in Ridgefield. Altna Craig on High Ridge. There was a suspicious fire, and it's no longer there. It burned down. Well, they took Alice to Altna Craig in an ambulance, and she was on a gurney, and she was strapped down, and you could see it was like paddy wagon. It was like prison. She hated Altna Craig. She had nothing to do with anyone there. unless they had something to do with women's rights in the ERA. I was one of the only people that was able to visit her there. At the end, she was transferred to a Quaker home in New Jersey, where she died. And what did I do? I decided, you know, like Lucy Burns, I've got to do something for myself. Yes, the ERA was such a part of my life. I was born in Norwalk. I loved the Lockwood Matthews house. It was a mansion of an industrial. It was magnificent. When I heard that my beloved mansion was going to be torn down, they were going to put the town hall, the city hall there, and just save the parklands, I was devastated. And I said to myself, I've used all my power for the ERA. Now I'm going to use this power and I'm going to save this mansion. And I got funds and I got people and I got volunteers and I saved that mansion. If you ever seen the Stepford Wives, you'll see what a beautiful, beautiful mansion I saved. Now there's a couple of other things that I did that I don't want you to forget I did. I started going through textbooks and I became so angry. There was only like less than 17% of the text had anything to do with women. The rest, white men just about. Every chapter focused on. So I started lobbying. I went to the book companies and I said, where am I going to find information on women? How are we going to influence the younger generation? And the textbook companies began to listen to me, and I even began to write for them. The other thing I did, I went to the colleges and I said, my goodness, look at the courses you give in history. You are giving courses in the kings of England, in African American history, and the Civil War. Where are courses about women, women's struggles, women's rights, great women? They listened to me. I had a voice, a strong voice. Today, I don't think that there is a college that doesn't have women's studies courses. Most colleges you can major in women's studies, and so many of our strong women leaders are coming from these programs. And the last thing that I wanted to share with you was something very, very personal, just for me and my family. Remember the story I was brought up on? The Transcontinental Railroad ride that my father took to Russia and he talked about endlessly. Well, here I have my Pan-American bag. In my 70s, I was the first woman to travel on a plane, Pan-America, to Russia to meet with women leaders. I thought this was so parallel, and I knew my Father up in heaven knew that I had made this Pan Am trip. Was my life a good one? My life was wonderful. My rock house in Reading, it went to my daughter. It went to my grandson. And now 2 lovely ladies live in my beloved house. And you know, unlike Alice's house on Branchville Road, mine is almost like a museum. It has been kept the way it was when I was there, and this so warms my heart. And in conclusion, I wanted to remind you that women stand on the shoulders of the women that came before them. I stood on the shoulders of Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and Lucy Burns. And on my shoulders, Alice Paul's shoulders, Lucy Burns, Alva Belmont, and Carrie Chapman Catt, stand the amazing Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Gloria Steinem, Bella Abzug, Betty Friedan, Shirley Chisholm, and so many others. And each of these women have said over and over in every speech that they give, remember the cause, respect the cause, and fight for the cause, because the cause for women will never end.
Thank you to Darla Shaw for that wonderful presentation, and to all of you for joining us this evening and being a part of Reading's celebration of the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment.